Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Great Gatsby and why it's something that cannot be repeated. So I'm also going to pick up a book that I've read recently called Nick by Michael Ferris Smith. So Nick is a prequel to the Great Gatsby about Nick, which is he's kind of the narrator to the Great Gatsby. And he's just your average Joe. Like, you can tell that like nothing's really going on, and especially reading this, like nothing's going on in this guy's life until he meets Gatsby, and then like his world is like finally 100 times better, and we have to hear about it. And I was just like, I don't care. I finished this book. I would give it 2 stars. But I want to discuss today why this cannot be repeated. This is I think this is Litjoy, but let's do a little book view here. But there's something about the Great Gatsby. Oh, it has gilded edges, guys. There's something about Gatsby that just cannot be, repeated. And some of it's the time period that Gatsby was written, which was during, give me a year that this book was written, probably not, 1925. Okay. So this was written during the time that they're talking about, which was the Roaring 20s. Now, a couple of things like we have to understand about history itself is during the Roaring 20s, there was a lot of money flow, but there was prohibition. So you would have people, usually new money, okay, not old money, usually new money, that was like smuggling alcohol in and throwing these big lavish parties. And that's what Gatsby really represents. Gatsby represents this idea of the new American dream. And does the real new American dream exist? Depending on how you read this novel is kind of how you answer that question. And then you have, so there's two separate islands. Gatsby's on the New Money Island, and then Daisy, which is his love interest, is on the Old Money Island with her lovely husband that we don't like. So that's really what it is. It's not really, there's like an aspect to it that of the love story between Daisy and Gatsby, and everybody's obsession with Gatsby. And I think it's a lot of this to do with like this old money like doesn't really understand this new money. And it's this mystery of, ooh, like I want some of that, because like he's throwing these like big lavish parties to get Daisy's attention. And that's the only reason why he's doing it. It's actually a very sad story when you're looking at Gatsby and you're finding out, like, one, not his real name. By the way, there's spoilers in this for this book. By the way, I do apologize. You do find out that, Gatsby's not his real name. He's kind of a con artist. And then, but you kind of, as a reader, you have to step back during these times. That's what he would have to do to make the money that he does, because old money was kind of overtaking still. So yeah, he's a con artist pretty much, and he really wants Daisy, and she's old money, and she's married to a a well-established businessman already. Like she's in a really good spot in her life, and she already has a kid and everything. And she's well established. And Nick is kind of this middleman. Like you can tell, like Nick is. I think Daisy and him are like cousins. And you can tell like he's well off too because he's on the old money island, but he's like in a house like I think the new movie does like a really good like a good scene where they're going to Nick's house and like you can kind of tell like it's still on the same island, but it's very tucked away. And Nick could be doing this for a couple different reasons. Nick, based off of the new way they're portraying Nick, not necessarily how they portrayed Nick in the original storyline, is mentally ill with something. I think it's probably some type of depression or something like that. So he might just want to be hidden away for that reason. Like maybe he doesn't want to deal with people. But he likes his cousin. Like and then he ends up really caring about Gatsby in a really weird way. But this story is more about the obsession of like money is really what it is. And I don't think Gatsby loves Daisy because of her money. I think it's definitely an obsession, more of an obsession with Daisy than a love for Daisy. And then we can always have the discussion like who actually wrote this, like F. Scott Fitzgerald or his wife, which I can't think of her name right now. And that could change the way you read it as well. Because if you're reading it more from like a man's point of view, let's just take it this way, I could see this story as more of an obsession story. If you read it from a woman's point of view, it's like a love that's like very dramatic and a love that a lot of women probably would want. Like this guy has like counted down the days since he last saw Daisy. That would have me, that when I was in high school was like very romantic in a weird sense. Now reading it as an adult and absorbing the story as an adult, yeah, I would run for the hills. Like, show me the nearest hill and I'm running for it because that is very, very creepy. But I think Daisy likes the attention. Like, she's with a guy that is already cheating on her. Like, that's very obvious in the story that he has a friend on the other side of the city. And having Gatsby's attention is probably like the best thing that's ever happened to Daisy. Because what I'm kind of thinking is like the first like maybe a year or two of Daisy's marriage was probably really good. And then by the time that they had the kid and everything, like this guy's like, no, I'm going to go find somebody else to give me attention. And then like Daisy was just kind of left alone. So having that attention from Gatsby and having what she thinks is a very much of a love that Gatsby has for her. Because what woman would not want a man to like get all this money just for her to throw these big lavish parties so he can see the girl of his dreams again? Like that is like a dream, like for some people, and I think Daisy really takes it as such. And then we have the green light, which is like a very big famous like symbolism of this book, which is the green light. And it's it's Gatsby like pretty much telling Daisy like, you know, please come over. And everything. So it's this whole like come to my green light. It's like a bug being obsessed with like a light. And that's what it feels like. Is like everybody's like so obsessed with like this green light. Um and you can take green as money, you can take green as greed. Like there's so many ways you can kind of see this symbol. In this book, it's pretty much, you know, Gatsby's putting the light on for Daisy. Um and then you have the eyes are watching you, which is pretty much like a symbolism of anybody that's actually if you're in high school reading this book, I'm giving you all the symbols. You're very welcome. But anyway, I didn't mean this to be a symbolism of the Great Gatsby, but it ties into what I was saying. But the eyes are watching you represents what are you doing to get where you are, and it's always like you always see these eyes like when these characters are doing something like really really wrong. So like when you find out like about Gatsby's schemes, like you see the eyes when you when Gatsby when Daisy hits her husband's mistress, like you see the eyes. You see the eyes when he's seeing his mistress. So like the eyes represent this complete and total idea of, oh, you're doing something wrong and we are watching you do it. No questions asked, like that's what it is. And I think I'm going to talk about the ending a little bit of Gatsby. Don't feel too bad. This book was written in 1925, and I think a lot of people have read this in school. But if you haven't, I am so sorry for spoilers. When Gatsby gets shot, it is 1929. And that is a very important year in American history when it comes to the Great Depression. Actually, the reason why we have Black Friday is to represent that. So the death of Gatsby, and with it going into kind of more from a spring to summer into the fall, which you can see in the movies. I don't know if they do that in the books. It represents the downfall of the new American dream and the fall of the new money. Because new money was obviously based off of the factor of how good the economy was during the Roaring 20s. So when we go from that into the 30s, most of the people that got hit was the new money people. The old money people are always going to have old money coming in. Somehow, some way, they always find money. Unless they do something really stupid. But based off of kind of what we were getting from kind of like the overall situation is, I mean, after this, if you follow the new movie, if we take the lore of the new movie, I mean, Nick is able to pay for therapy, which is very expensive. I don't know if it was that expensive back then, but it's really expensive now, so I'm just going to take that into factor. So, sorry guys. Yeah, so it's very much based on this factor of like, I think that's actually the mistress. I don't think that's, I would love to say that's Daisy because that's obviously Gatsby up front, but if you look at that, I think that's the mistress. I don't think that's Daisy. I think that's the mistress, because that's where the mistress kind of lives. So, yeah. I mean, I am like really tempted to reread Gatsby as being an adult. So you might get a re-review of Gatsby. I don't see me ever hating this book, but I see me looking at this book as more of a problematic book. I remember, I think I reread Wuthering Heights, and it's very problematic. And that's the thing that, going back to these classics, when you're reviewing classics, there's a couple of things you have to understand. Like, you have to understand the time period that the classic is coming from. So if you're talking about like how Mark Twain is dealing with slavery and how he's talking about it, that was that was how he was feeling at the time. So when you're looking at something like The Great Gatsby, you have to see how money was being made. And it wasn't always in the best terms possible. Um, and that's why I don't think we'd ever go through a probation period of alcohol ever again. Because of kind of all the problems that it starts. And that's like another thing too that is kind of interesting to me reading this now and never having to go through a probation period of my life, and always having the ability, obviously, of age. I'm not promoting any underage drinking, guys. But if you're of the age of 21, like, you can easily get alcohol. Like, that's something like you can easily get. Like, it's all over the place, especially now. Like, it's in the grocery stores. So, like, feeling like Gatsby's like nature of like, this is what I have to do to make money, like, kind of makes me kind of laugh a little bit, because of the factor that as Americans, I don't think we'll ever understand that side of the Roaring Twenties. And the other thing is, it's like a lot of what we watch, unless you're watching something that's very much set in the Roaring Twenties and they're doing it correctly, they're showing alcohol all over the place. Like, it's kind of like the Roaring Twenties was a fantasy, and that's okay. And that's really what this feels like. Is obviously Nick is kind of the one that's absorbing this information, and I'm guessing is writing it down based off of the new movie. But in here, like, he's not doing any of that. So, but I take him as the narrator, because it's not, which makes everything feel like a fantasy. Like, because I just don't think they've seen parties like this before. Gatsby's like kind of like a god figure in this book. And like is extraordinary. Like, so there's a quote on the back of this box that I want to read, and then I'll kind of wrap this up. His dream must have seemed so close that he could hardly fail to grasp it. He did not know that it was already behind him. And I just think that is a good concluding statement about this book as a whole. Like I said, this book is definitely cannot be rewritten. I think it's so much of a symbolism book where it's really hard to reproduce those symbols in a way where it really is about the symbols and not the people themselves. Um, I would say if you were to do any prequel for this book, I would have rather had Daisy's point of view. Daisy to me is like a little bit more interesting of a character. I would have liked to see her like kind of fall in love with her husband and see how that went. Um, and then kind of their downfall, her meeting Gatsby, and like her view of it all, because I think that would have complete the whole love story. Like, because we're only seeing the love story not even from really either one of them. We're seeing it from Nick's point of view and what Nick gets from, I'm guessing, Daisy and Gatsby. Because the shirt scene was probably Daisy like going to Nick and be like, guess what happened? And then she describes this whole scene. And it's very fantastical and everything else. That's why that scene is written that way. And that's why when you see it in the movies, it's so dramatic because you're hearing it from somebody that's making it fantastical. But what does it really look like? And that would be something like if this was actually from Gatsby or Daisy's point of view, we would see a more realistic version of whatever this love story is. But if you made it this far, thank you so much. Leave a car emoji for this car right here. And like and subscribe, hit that bell, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.